The topic is product user values empowered by with AI, and we're gonna get to more details to help you navigate the early uncertainty and find the product market fit, especially with the help of AI. I would like to introduce the speaker of today, that is Jachin Cheng, the Group Product Managers from Google.
This is kind of where we're going. I'll give a little bit of a preamble. I'll introduce myself. We'll talk about product market fit. I want to highlight 4 big risks that face every company, including yours. And then we'll do a bit of a deep dive on AI and hopefully have some time to do a hands-on demo. Thanks again for taking the time. I just want to start off by saying this is, across the arc of history, the absolute best time to be starting a new tech startup. And so the fact that you all are on this journey, I'm so excited for you. But as a reminder, this is from a quote from one of my personal mentors: every day you're earning the right to progress. Every day the actions that you take can mean the difference between failure, which is obviously a high rate of failure among startups, or eventually doing something that's notable and impactful. A quick story. So I joined Google about 15 years ago. I got to meet our CEO, Sundar Pichai, back then. And he came up through the ranks. He was just a group product manager like me today. But what I noticed about him was he always carried a notebook around, and he had the top 3 things that he was going to accomplish today, the top 3 biggest things that he was going to accomplish. And a lot of his success was built on having that personal level of focus and taking a lot of action towards those top 3 things every day. And so that was a bit of an inspiration for me. The last thing I'd say before introducing myself is AI is evolving weekly, if not daily. And while I will touch on in this presentation a number of different tools, a number of different ways to think about it, you could spend all of your time trying to keep up with the latest and greatest, but you might not need everything. And as entrepreneurs, your time is limited, your energy is limited, and you might want to think about, how much time do you actually devote to keeping up with this, with new developments. Okay, so a little bit about me. This is my 2nd year mentoring with Google for Startups Academy in Vietnam. I've lived all around the world. I have a computer science background as well as an MBA. And prior to Google, I was a 3-time tech entrepreneur with 1 exit and 2 big failings, and a ton of learning. And so I'm happy to share those with you and how I see AI applying to startups today. I've been at Google for 15 years. I've been all over the world with Google and very happy to be here in Southeast Asia. I'm based in Singapore now. Okay, so that was the preamble, my introduction. Let's talk about your companies and where you are. So you're likely somewhere in the early stages between the initial conception of your business and your ideas, somewhere along the journey to finding product market fit, maybe even having some traction, and starting to scale, extend your offerings, even defend your market position. But I believe most of you are somewhere along this continuum. You might have heard about this term, product market fit. I would like to elaborate on that because there's a lot of misconceptions and different notions about it. But it is one of these crucial pivot points in the life of any product startup company. So what is it, and how do you find it? Well, first, what is it not? And I'll abbreviate product market fit as PMF here. What it isn't is, I'd say, these lower level signals of maybe traction, maybe some initial validation of your thesis. So whether it's you have a certain number of installs, monthly active users, maybe you've even closed some angel or institutional funding. Maybe even you have customers who are paying. What's before product market fit? We'll lead up to that. Before product market fit is a process of discovery, and so we'll talk about how do you get to that, and yeah, we'll talk more about that. I'd say the starting point is this: it's your market. The starting point is, and the biggest threat is there's just no market for what you're building. And so this is the number one company killer is there's a lack of market for it. Your tech might be great, your ideas might be great, but if there's no market, there's no company to be had. So where does product market fit start? This is a great quote from Mark Andreessen. Being in a good market with a product capable of satisfying that market. So let's unpack this statement a bit. What's a good market? Well, a good market is big and growing, right? It needs to be accessible to you, right? Whether that's geographically, it doesn't help if there's a bunch of users and in Turkey, but they don't speak Vietnamese or English, and it's just not accessible to you, right? There needs to be a certain level of willingness to pay. And then maybe the biggest one here is that there is a clear problem that you can solve. And that leads to the second part of the statement here, and that is, not only does the market need to be good with those conditions I mentioned, but also that you have a product that's capable of satisfying that market, right? And so how do you decide what product is capable of satisfying that market? Well, it requires a process of discovery, and we'll talk about that more. How do you know you've achieved or you've reached this kind of nebulous point of product market fit? And again, Mark Andreessen describes it this way, which is you feel it. It's not, you can't just declare I've reached product market fit, or you can't, there's not necessarily very concrete outward markers for this, but you feel it. And the feeling is there's a shift from push to pull. Right, so this is your product, this big gray box, and right now your sensation, correct me if I'm wrong, but your sensation is likely this push. It's a lot of effort, a lot of energy, a lot of activities to push your product into the market. You have to go sell, you have to go market, you have to build it, right? It's this heavy lift to push it to your customers, to your users, whether you're B2B, B2B2C, or B2C. The early stages are, it's a push. That's your sensation. You found product market fit when that push feeling turns to a pull, which is your market, your users, your customers and clients start to pull your solution, your product, your features out from you. They want more. This is the quote. They're buying it just as fast as you can make it. Or the usage is growing so quickly, you have to add more servers. You run out of all of your, AWS credits or Google, cloud credits, and now you have to start paying for it, right? You have to staff up on sales and customer support or customer success. People are calling you to find out what you're actually building instead of you trying to get out into the market and get press and get in front of investors. That's this pivot point. So that's great, and that's inspirational, and that's hopefully where, we want you to go. But how do you get there? And this is, back to your earlier question, what's before product market fit? It's really a period of discovery. So a lot of people have this notion, okay, I have this idea, now I got to start building. But the question is, are you building the right thing? Have you discovered what is the right thing that will actually address the needs in the market? And with that backdrop, I'd like to highlight, I think this is a great framework for any entrepreneur, any product leader to think about facing the unknowns in your market. This is from a book called Inspired. It's kind of the Bible for a lot of product managers at Google and the Silicon Valley. 4 big risks. And we'll kind of slow down and step through these, and then we'll come back to these to talk about how AI can help de-risk these. Right? So value risk, usability risk, feasibility risk, and business risk. And to unpack that a bit, value risk is really about, is what I'm building solving a real need and a big need, an important need. And this is probably the biggest risk, and we'll talk about this more. Usability risk is whatever I build, is it easy to understand, to learn how to use? Is it intuitive for people who are using it? Feasibility risk, some people call it technical feasibility risk, is really looking at it from the builder's perspective. Once we've defined what problem we're gonna solve, do we have the time and skills and the technology we need to actually build it? And then business risk is also or business viability risk is also an important area, which is, given my company's goals, my strategy, my market position, and the market, does the product that I'm building face unknowns and other challenges, whether it's regulatory, whether it's product competition from other competitors. And so this is another big bucket of risks. Let's deep dive into value risk, because this is directly tied with achieving product market fit. And I like to step back and make this statement, right? Most people, whether you're selling B2B or you're selling B2C, most people don't like to change. Most people are busy. They have other priorities. They don't like new stuff. They are distracted by other things. And so the crux, and one of the things I want to challenge all of you to consider is this 10x rule, which is your thing 10x the alternative? And remember, the alternative might be, I do nothing. That's a very real alternative for your customers, for your users, is I don't adopt this thing, this new thing that your company is building, I could do nothing. And why is 10x important? Is because if your thing is not 10x better, faster, cheaper, easier to use, maybe it's cleaner, for the environment, maybe it's 10x more fun. If it's not 10x on some dimension, the chances are very low that you'll get people to adopt what you're using, right? 10x is just kind of the industry, like what we use at Google, what a lot of VCs use. It'll be, you can measure it in some cases. Hey, it's 10x cheaper to send an email than it is to mail a letter. It's 10x faster to send that email than it is to send a postcard, right? So some things are quantifiable, but it's a rough rule of thumb to say, if it's not 10x better in some way, it'll be really hard for people to change their behavior. So how do you get to that 10x? And a 10x value, right? You want to create 10x value. But the thing to look for is the pain, because the opposite of value is pain. And if you can find the biggest pain, you'll likely find the biggest opportunity to create 10x value. And so, very simple pain over value chart: low pain, low value; high pain, high value. And one of the common tropes in venture capital language is this, which is different types of solutions to different types of pain. So if you're exercising, you run out of energy, maybe you go out and you buy some vitamins, and that gives you a little bit more energy and you can exercise more. It's kind of lower level pain and a lower value solution. It's a nice to have, right? But if you have a pounding headache and you can't think and you can't work, the value of that painkiller is higher for you, right? Because the pain is greater, the pain is more acute. But let's say you're in an accident and you're just bleeding out and you're about to die. The value of a tourniquet to stop the bleeding is the difference between life and death for you, right? So you see that as the pain goes up, the value of your solution also goes up. So that's the takeaway from that is, right, you all started with some hypothesis about a problem you're going to solve. I would challenge you to dig deeper and see, is that the biggest pain point that I can be solving in this market? Are there adjacent pain points that create more pain for my users, for my target audience, than the starting point where I am right now? Right? And the saying here is, fall in love with the problem, not with the solution. Right? You might have already this great idea about this great thing you're going to build, but if it's not solving the biggest pain point for your customers, you're missing an opportunity to create more value. So that was all kind of, generic company building and how I think about whether, I'm building a product within Google, or even how startups are building products and addressing new markets and new market niches. Now I'd like to pivot a bit and talk about AI. So this is an inspirational quote from Andrew Ng, considered one of the godfathers of modern, right, AI today. And that is, AI is the new electricity, meaning it's going to power a bunch of stuff that we don't even know about today. Right? When Thomas Edison was creating light bulbs, he didn't know electricity would power automobiles, right? So we don't even know, what AI will power, but we do have some very concrete things that we can accomplish with AI today. And that's why there's so much promise and so much, I would say, also hyperbole about AI today. But let's break it down a bit. And this slide is also from Andrew Ng, from deeplearning.ai. And it gives a bit of a schematic visual of kind of the universe of AI. And broadly, it's a term that people use to include a bunch of different things. Right now, a lot of the focus is on that orange circle, generative AI, and I'll be talking a lot more about generative AI, but wanted to make the historic kind of comparison that supervised learning is a set of techniques in machine learning that has existed for a long time, many decades, a lot earlier than even ChatGPT and the generative AI products that we're seeing today. And it's used in a lot of different areas. But then there's some more exotic variants of machine learning, which includes unsupervised learning and then reinforcement learning. And so some examples of these, as I mentioned, supervised learning. We use it a lot within Google to classify things like text, to classify images. If you use Google Photos on your phone, you can type in, right, images of me on a mountain, or you can search for cats, or you can search for birthday cake, and it'll pull that. That's using a bunch of supervised learning on the back end. We use it in Google Search. We use it in Google Ads for making recommendations, for predicting things like, what's the most likely ad that a given user will click on. We also use it for speech recognition. So a lot of use cases for supervised learning. Generative AI has had this breakout moment since November 2022 last year. Today, actually, Google also announced our latest entrant into the multimodal large language models. If you're not super technical, I would just say the breakout that we had around generative AI is because the user interfaces are incredibly easy to use. And there's so much power behind these that a lot of people got excited, their hands on it, got excited about it. But generative is also being used in a lot of more niche areas, such as synthetic data generation, discovering new medicines, new materials, and even in design circles for generative design, for architecture, engineering, and construction. And so that's a big area. Unsupervised learning and reinforcement learning are a little bit more niche, a little bit more exotic, so to speak. So things like if you don't have a bunch of labeled data, but you can find clusters of transaction information and figure out, oh, this new cluster, actually, this might be an anomaly or fraud, and recognizing patterns like that in data. So that's unsupervised learning. And gaming, for reinforcement learning, you might have heard of AlphaGo and a bunch of stuff that Google DeepMind was doing previously. So that's reinforcement learning. Yeah, I'll get back to your question, Hui Ha. Thank you for that, about the broader market. But I wanted to make this point. These techniques and approaches, if you want to use it, you should think of AI and machine learning as a core ingredient. If your product is a cake, AI should be like flour or sugar or baking soda for your cake. It shouldn't just be like icing. And you might talk to some investors, you might talk to some people out there who say, yeah, what you're doing is interesting, but can you add some AI to it? That's not the starting point for building AI into your product. And hopefully, the reason I kind of skimmed over that previous slide was, hopefully, your tech teams, your CTO, your co-founders, are knowledgeable enough, if it's relevant for your business, to be able to say, yes, we should have AI at the core of what we're doing, or right now it's not critical path to solving this problem, right? And so so that's the point about AI as an ingredient. But as founders, I think you're all, founders or early employees of early stage startups. I think the biggest opportunity right now is this. The biggest opportunity is to hire a super cheap co-founder. His or her name is generative AI. This is a entrepreneur's superpower that's like available right now. Whether it's Gemini with Embard, whether it's ChatGPT, we'll look at some examples. But I want you to shift. Let's put aside AI as an ingredient for your product and talk about how Gen AI today, like right now, right after this session, don't do it while I'm talking so you can pay attention, please. Right now, you can start to use this in incredible ways. Why is that? Think about this. Your entrepreneur is sitting in Vietnam. The foundational frontier models of ChatGPT, Gemini, is trained on the collective public knowledge of entrepreneurs who have gone before you and built billion-dollar companies, of venture capitalists who have invested in those billion-dollar companies, of advisors, of marketers, of HR experts, of lawyers, of on and on and on and on. All the stuff that you might not be an expert in right now, that collective knowledge and those frameworks and the mistakes that have been made and the learnings that's all mostly all embodied in this little thing sitting in the middle of the picture. It's all embodied in the collective knowledge of these models. And that is the superpower that's very cheaply available to you right now. So I want to look at some ways that you can use this. I focus my examples and maybe we'll look at some demos later around ChatGPT, because up until maybe yesterday, GPT-4 was the most powerful model available on the market. About 12 hours ago, Google announced Gemini, which is a new model that's available in Bard. The Gemini Pro model is available in Bard, and we're making Gemini Ultra, which is an even bigger, more sophisticated model, available through an API. And so this is all happening right now, but it's also super accessible. The number one thing I can advise you is get your hands dirty. Just start using it if you haven't already, and use it in more sophisticated ways than just playing around with it. And so the next few slides, I'm going to go through 20 different ways. And this is just the start of it. 20 different ways that Gen AI can amplify your company and help de-risk those big 4 risks that we're talking about. Two caveats. Number one, these models still hallucinate. What does that mean? Well, they're not 100% truthful. They can say things that sound authoritative, but aren't. So you have to think about using these tools in a hybrid way, meaning they'll help you think and structure your the way you think. They'll bring new creative ideas to the table that you hadn't thought about before. But you always have to apply common sense, do your homework, look at other resources, because these models might give you things that sound truthful, that sound authoritative, but aren't always 100%. And that's a big part of the work that's happening right now within Google, within Microsoft, within OpenAI, is how do we stop these models from hallucinating? But this is a risk that exists right now. So go in with your eyes wide open. The second caveat is all of these examples that I'm going to give you, none of it can replace actually talking with people. Okay? Like, you still have to go do your customer interviews, but maybe AI can help you structure how you have those conversations a lot more efficiently. It'll also help point you to areas you haven't even thought about before. But again, don't just do desk research. Don't just do simulated AI-based customer interviews. Like, go sit down in a coffee shop, go chase down your customers, go talk with people on the street or in your network, because nothing is going to replace the concrete interactions that you can have with people, right? So think of AI as an accelerant, think of AI as an human amplification, but it's not going to replace face-to-face, discussions with your partners, with your users, and obviously with your staff. Okay, so let's bring it all the way back again to those 4 buckets of risk, right? So there's value risk, usability risk, feasibility risk, and business viability risk. So here's, for each of the categories, 4 ideas for how to de-risk these categories. First of all, value risk, right? Remember, it's about finding the pain points. And this is stuff that it used to be so hard and tedious or expensive to go do this, right? So just basic market research. How big is the market? Is it growing? What are some of the unknown factors that you don't know? Ideally, you're close enough to your market, and we'll look at some examples to understand this, but getting deeper insights into what's the total addressable market, what is the value chain in my industry, who are the other players that I'm not thinking about right now, what are the inefficiencies that exist, are those the biggest inefficiencies, or are there other pain points? Like, these are all questions that you can query into these Gen AI tools, and use the tools as a thought partner to help you think through your business. Secondly is validating the specific user problem, right? There's a technique called the 5 whys, right? Where when you're interviewing a user to understand their pain point, you ask why 5 times. Why was that hard? And they give you an answer, and then you ask why again. You can simulate all of this within these large language models. That's related to understanding the problems more deeply, and then also brainstorming and comparing different solutions. Right, one of the traps we fall into as entrepreneurs and even as product managers in big companies is we latch on. We get a statement, we understand a problem statement pretty well, and then we latch on to one solution, and then we go build it. But there might be 3, 5, 8 different ways that we could actually solve that problem. And so using Gen AI to very quickly and efficiently brainstorm, what are the 5 different ways that this could be solved, right? And I'll come back and we'll give some examples of this in a few minutes, just to make it a little bit more concrete. Usability risk. This one I was just shocked when I tried this. So there's a technique that at Google we use. It's not always applicable, but it can be very insightful. It's called a design sprint. Externally, other people call it a double diamond sprint. I won't go into the details of that, but it used to be startups would hire a specialist or have somebody come in and run this for a week, and who understands the process. There's a great book called Sprint that came out of Google Ventures. So these techniques exist, but they're expensive or they're time consuming. You can simulate all of these very quickly within Gen AI. I'll give you an example. Number 6 is probably something that you're working with. Better storytelling. A big part of your success as an entrepreneur depends on your ability to tell a good story, whether it's to users, whether it's to partners, whether it's to investors, right? And so using this to rewrite, and in number 7, wordsmith, product copy. There's a lot of startups that are doing this right now. Unfortunately, there's a lot of copywriters and specialists who've built their whole careers about crafting that perfect marketing copy or writing, help center articles and little labels within product. You can do it a lot faster and a lot cheaper by just using ChatGPT or Bard. Or even more sophisticated things like number 8, creating surveys and interview guides. When you do go sit down and talking and interviewing users, what do you ask them? How do you structure, online surveys? Like these things will, ChatGPT will spit out whole surveys for you, and you can just cut and paste that into Google Forms or your other tools. Like you can save so much time. You can get the embodied best practices from all those people, like in seconds. And this is the real unlock. Gen AI is also a 10x unlock for developers. Some of the startups that I've invested in, right? One of them I just met 2 weeks ago. The founder's based here in Singapore. His developers are in the Philippines. He doesn't pay them very much, and to be honest, they're not the the top tier elite developers. He bought them all ChatGPT 4 licenses. Is pretty cheap, and they've literally 10x their output, right? Because you can brainstorm alternative technical solutions. You can get code suggestions, and he sometimes pseudocodes, sends it to them, and they use Gen AI to complete the compilable code. Even debugging assistance, like all of this, and the tools are getting better by the day. But this is available right now if you're not using it already. The last one here, maybe this is not top of mind for you, but right now, but it's always worth a check to see, what are some of the regulatory issues that I might face right now in Vietnam. What are the best practices around data privacy and transparency? There's a lot of expert knowledge that exists in online, but it's really hard to go find that, even through Google search. And so in a sense, ChatGPT and LLMs can be used, Gen AI can be used to bring all of that, summarize it, and put it together for you in a very efficient way. And then lastly, business viability risk. And this is pretty broad, but what I like to say here is our thinking is all limited. It's the way we structured our thought process always has rooms for improvement, right? And this is a tool. It's an all-in-one tool to help you think more broadly, think more deeply, to structure your thinking, right? And see things that you don't see right now, whether they're opportunities or threats. So just to go through these examples, one is going back to my point about talking with people. A big part of the success of your companies depends on the people you know. You're not on an island. You're operating in a fairly complex ecosystem, and but who are the right people you should go meet? You could just ask that. If I'm in the logistics business in Vietnam, who are the key people? Who are the key players? Who are the key partners that I should meet right now? You can just ask, and it'll give you back a bunch of suggestions. Number 14, I think I've been using this actually a lot, right? And that is to frame your thinking. This is a massive amplification, right? So just a few examples here. So MISI is just a framework. It's mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive, meaning you could apply this to a bunch of things. Like, let's say I want to do a customer segmentation analysis. I'm an e-commerce company and I want to understand all of my customers. you can say, you give me a MECE analysis of online shoppers in Vietnam, and it'll just spit it out, right? So these are non-overlapping categories, mutually exclusive. Collectively exhaustive means like it covers everybody, and then you can drill into it and start to think. This is your thought partner. You can start to think about what are the most attractive customer segments that I should be focusing on right now. SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Like just throw it in there. You'll get you'll get new ideas no matter what. Apply 5 forces to the event planning industry in Vietnam. Just say that. I'll show you some examples. It's pretty shocking how this will, enlighten your thinking. Business model canvas is also a great one that I've used. But you can just toss these prompts at Gen AI, and it will really accelerate your thinking. Simulate scenarios to test assumptions, number 15. I think this is also a big one, which is, a lot of your skill as an entrepreneur is you're trying to create a future that doesn't exist today, right? You're trying to predict that future so that you can go build it. And Gen AI can be a great tool to help you think about different scenarios for that future. And then lastly, and I think I mentioned this a little bit before, is you're not experts on a lot of different domains that will directly, that you'll run into as you run your business, right? Whether it's understanding the legal regulatory environment you're operating in, whether it's hiring and firing people, like how do you price your product? How do you go fundraise? What's a good go-to-market strategy, or what are 5 different go-to-market strategies for my business in this market? All of that expert knowledge, to a certain degree, again, is embodied in these models, and you can just ask them those questions to the models instead of hiring a business consultant, instead of or in addition to, maybe in some cases you do have to hire people. But this is such a hack, this is such a powerful tool that I really advise you just spend some time with it, maybe every day, on all your different problems. So let's see, I have I want to run through some quick demos because this is pretty powerful. So Bard right now is powered by Gemini Pro as of 12 hours ago. So I'm just trying this for the first time. I want to imagine I'm I'm an event planner, and I want to try to understand the event planning space in Vietnam. So what are the biggest challenges facing event planners in Vietnam, e.g., weddings, corporate retreats, etc. So you can just start and even if you have some familiarity in this area, you can help validate and spot new things that maybe you're not thinking about already. So budget and constraints, cultural considerations, emerging trends and technology, it just spits it out at you. Some of it might trigger a new thought or a new idea, right? Give me a MECE breakdown of all e-commerce shoppers in Vietnam. So customer segmentation. I didn't even say customer segmentation. Let's see if it comes back with it. So you can break down by demographics, income, right? Shopping behavior. What are the most, I'm an e-commerce company, right? What are the most common items bought online. Vietnam, right? Maybe I saw a product category. Oh, that's pretty interesting. So which of those categories are sold the most? I don't know. Let's go find out, right? Competitive analysis. Who are the biggest e-commerce platforms in Vietnam? So maybe I don't want to compete with Shopee and Lazada, but I know e-commerce is growing, right? I know e-commerce is growing, and maybe I don't want to build out a competitive platform, but what problems do e-commerce platforms face in Vietnam? So I'm just taking you down a bit of a rabbit hole here, but the point is there's so much behind these models that okay, I'm going to pick up on this one. Okay, biggest challenges, logistical and operational challenges, last mile delivery, right? Last mile delivery is hard. Why is last mile delivery hard in Vietnam for these companies? So this is your thought partner, right? And your thought partner doesn't have infinite knowledge, but it has maybe a lot more knowledge than you do. So infrastructure, logistics, and operations. Oh, this is interesting. High reliance on COD, lack of standardization, limited automation, right? So order fulfillment, delivery routing is inefficient and error prone. And then you can drill into that, right? And so this is these are some ideas. So let's say, and the other one I wanted to try is I want to run a double diamond sprint exercise. Okay, so you can just say, okay, this is what I want to do, right? And it will guide you. You try this. Like you don't have to be you don't have to be an expert in it. You don't need to know how to run it, but it will guide you how to do it. Okay, what is the problem with and so it becomes this iteration and it steps you through. Okay, we'll go through this discovery phase. We'll go through a define phase. We'll go through a develop phase. So all of these are best practices. They're locked up in books. That was another one I use this for, is like if I see a good business book, but I don't have the time to read it, you just come in and say, summarize inspired by Marty Kagan. Like you don't have to buy a subscription for executive book summaries anymore. Like this is all kind of embodied in these tools. Oh, sorry. I don't know why Bard doesn't do it, but you can get book summaries from ChatGPT, and so that's pretty easy to do. But my point is, and I want to leave a little bit of time for questions. My point is, like all of these examples that I shared earlier, like these are powerful hacks that you can access right now that are cheaper, at least if not free, they're cheap, a lot cheaper to access, that will help you de-risk like these four big areas. And so anyways, I kind of ran out of time, but there's so much more here. Get your hands dirty, try it out, because really Gen AI can be your third or fourth co-founder that you don't have right now.
Thank you so much, everyone. We'll look forward to you in the next session next week as well. Thank you so much, Jachin.